What would you do if someone grabbed your child's graduation gift right in front of your entire family and everyone laughed like it was nothing? Would you ignore it to keep the peace, or would you remember that moment forever? I didn't know the answer until the afternoon of my son Ethan's graduation party. It was one of those hot summer days where the air barely moved and the backyard felt full before the first guest even arrived. Folding tables covered with white plastic cloth stretched across the lawn. Aluminum trays of baked pasta and grilled chicken sat under the sun, slowly warming, while balloons tied to the fence drifted sideways in the breeze. Conversations overlapped everywhere. Uncles talking about work, cousins arguing about music, glasses clinking as people reached into the cooler for drinks. In the middle of that noise stood Ethan. He was next to the drink cooler, with his graduation sash across his shoulders slightly hunched, like he was trying not to draw attention to himself. That's always been his way. Ethan has never been the kind of kid who celebrates loudly. He just works quietly and lets the results speak for themselves. Top of his class. A scholarship waiting for him in the fall. Years of late-night studying, while most kids his age were out doing something easier. When enough relatives had gathered nearby, I walked over and handed him a small envelope. "It's nothing big," I told him. Ethan smiled immediately, already embarrassed. "Dad, you didn't have to." Inside the envelope was a prepaid card. Not a fortune, but enough to help him upgrade the laptop he'd need when college started. Something practical for the next chapter of his life. He pulled the card out and glanced at the amount, and I saw that quiet look cross his face, the one he gets when he's overwhelmed but trying to stay composed. And that's when everything shifted. My nephew Ryan moved faster than I'd ever seen him move before. 1 second Ethan was holding the card. The next second Ryan snatched it straight out of his hand and lifted it up like a trophy. "I deserve this more than you," he shouted, laughing like it was a joke. For a second, the entire backyard went still. I waited for someone to correct him. Anyone. But a couple cousins chuckled. My brother smirked. Ryan's mother waved her hand and said, "Relax, it's just money." And the hardest part wasn't Ryan's words. It was Ethan. He didn't grab the card back. He just stood there blinking quietly, like he was trying to understand the rules of this moment. Ryan eventually handed the card back after I told him to, shrugging like the whole thing had been nothing more than a joke. Ethan forced a small smile. The kind people use when they're trying to smooth over an awkward moment so everyone else can stay comfortable. Conversations slowly started up again. Plates clattered. Someone turned the music a little louder, and the party continued as if nothing had happened. But for me, that moment refused to disappear. It sat quietly in the back of my mind, because what happened in that backyard wasn't new. It was just the clearest example of something I had been noticing for years. Ryan and Ethan grew up in the same extended family, sitting at the same holiday tables, hearing the same stories. But somehow, the paths they walked looked completely different. Ethan had always been the steady one, the kid who stayed up late studying when everyone else was asleep, the one who spent weekends preparing science fair projects and shelving books during his part-time shifts at the school library. Every achievement he earned came from patience and discipline, built slowly over time, like something carefully constructed. Ryan's story always seemed to move in the opposite direction. When his grades slipped, it was because the teacher didn't understand him. When he got cut from a sports team, it was because the coach favored other players. Somehow the responsibility for every setback always landed somewhere else, and every time those explanations appeared, someone in the family would step in to support them. Whenever Ethan succeeded, the conversation subtly shifted. Someone would say that not everyone is academic. Another relative would add that success looks different for everyone. The message sounded generous on the surface, but over time I realized what it was really doing. It softened the comparison, so Ryan would never have to face it directly. 2 months before that graduation party, I had tried to give him a different direction. Through my consulting work, I arranged a summer internship at a logistics company I worked closely with. It was an entry-level position, paid, structured, the kind of job that teaches people to arrive on time and answer emails responsibly. I told the director honestly that Ryan still had rough edges but could benefit from discipline. They trusted my recommendation. When Ryan heard about the opportunity, though, his reaction unsettled me. He celebrated immediately, talking as if the job already belonged to him. At dinner one night, his mother smiled proudly and said, "See, things always work out." I nodded politely, but inside I knew something she didn't. Opportunities don't simply appear. Someone always stands behind them, quietly placing their own reputation on the line. That thought stayed with me long after the party ended. When the last car finally pulled away and the backyard lights were switched off, the house slowly settled into silence. Ethan had already gone to bed, and the hallway outside his room was dark. I sat alone at my desk, the only light in the room coming from the soft glow of my laptop screen. The quiet felt heavier than usual, like the house itself was holding its breath. I opened the email thread about Ryan's summer internship, the one I had arranged 2 months earlier through a logistics firm I consult for. The message chain looked ordinary enough, polite confirmations and scheduling notes, but one line in the agreement stood out more clearly now than it had before. The offer was still contingent on final confirmation from my office. In other words, the position wasn't officially locked in yet. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the screen for a long time, letting that sentence sit in front of me. A question surfaced that I had to answer honestly before doing anything else. Was this retaliation? I forced myself to test the idea carefully. If Ryan had taken the card earlier and immediately turned around to apologize to Ethan, would I be thinking about writing this email? No, I wouldn't. If his mother had stepped in and told him clearly that what he did was wrong, would this decision even be crossing my mind? Probably not. And if any adult standing in that backyard had defended Ethan's dignity before I had to speak, I would have closed this laptop and gone to bed. But none of those things happened. What happened instead was something quieter and more troubling. Entitlement performed openly, then excused just as casually. That realization settled in slowly, like a stone dropping to the bottom of still water. The issue had never been the gift card itself. Money was never the real point. What mattered was the message that effort could be taken, laughed at, and dismissed without consequence. I placed my hands on the keyboard and began typing carefully. The email was short and deliberate. After further consideration, I wrote, "Please withdraw the internship offer extended to Ryan. I do not believe he is prepared to represent our referral at this time. Thank you for your understanding. No anger. No personal accusations. Just a professional decision." I read the message twice before sending it. The clock in the corner of the screen read 10:42 p.m. Less than an hour later, a reply arrived from the director. "Understood. We will cancel the onboarding slot. Thank you for the notice." And in that quiet moment, I understood something simple. Real authority rarely needs to raise its voice. Sometimes it is just a calm decision, written clearly and sent. The quiet authority of that email did not last long. The next morning, my phone began vibrating before I had even finished my first cup of coffee. The first message came from Ryan. "They said the internship isn't happening. What's going on?" A few seconds later, another notification appeared, this time from his mother. What did you do?" I read both messages, but didn't answer right away. Some decisions deserve a moment of distance before they are explained. So I set the phone down, finished my coffee, and went about the morning as usual. It wasn't until later in the afternoon that I finally replied. My message was simple and direct. I withdrew my recommendation. The response arrived almost immediately. She wrote that I couldn't just do that Ryan had been counting on the job all summer. I stared at the screen for a moment before answering again. "The position was offered on my word," I wrote, "and that means I can withdraw it." The conversation grew tense in the next few messages. She insisted I was overreacting, that what happened at the party had been nothing serious. Then she repeated the same phrase she had used the day before in the backyard. It was just money. I held the phone in my hand for a long moment before typing the final reply. "If that card was just money," I wrote, "then that internship was just a job." After that message, the conversation ended. No more texts arrived that day. The family group chat became unusually quiet in the following week. My brother didn't call, Ryan didn't message again. At dinner a few nights later, the house felt calm, almost reflective. The rhythm of normal life returned slowly. One evening, while Ethan and I were standing at the sink washing dishes together, he spoke without looking up. "Dad, you didn't have to make such a big deal out of that." I rinsed a plate and placed it in the rack before answering. "I didn't make a big deal," I said gently. "I just made a decision." Ethan nodded slowly, drying his hands with a towel. "I noticed," he said quietly. That moment stayed with me. In a few months he would leave for college, stepping into a world where effort matters and respect should never be optional. And I realized something too. Protecting your child does not always require raised voices or public arguments. Sometimes protection is quieter than that. Sometimes it is simply a clear boundary, written calmly and sent.